What is going on, everybody? I am Hoops and Hip Hop, and welcome to the 15th episode of the Pokeblock Podcast. As I always say every week, it's hard to believe that I've been doing this for 15 weeks. That's pretty crazy. And today's episode is going to be... I feel like I always say this, but today's episode is going to be particularly interesting and fun because I do have a topic in mind for today, which we'll get into in a minute, but we're really kind of just going to be shooting the breeze and talking about really anything and everything that comes to mind because in terms of just like things that are going on within the Pokemon franchise, as far as Sword and Shield, as far as in general, there's not a whole lot going on Sword and Shield wise, I will say. However, we did just get the release of Pokemon Masters. That came out at the time of this recording. It came out yesterday on the 29th. And that has actually been a buzz in the community. It's been getting people talking, which is surprising for a mobile game because usually mobile games are kind of just whatever. They're not like super impressive. They don't get talked about a lot. People don't usually care about them. But Pokemon Masters definitely has had some effort put into it. It's definitely better than your average mobile game. It's definitely worth playing. I have played it a little bit and I have enjoyed what I've played so far. I've talked about this on my own personal channel as well in depth. But yeah, as far as Pokemon Masters goes, I am really enjoying it so far. But when it comes to like Sword and Shield news, main series news, that type of stuff, we haven't had anything for a long time. I say a long time, but it's really like 3 weeks or something. It's not really that long. But in video game news time, that's a long time to not really have anything new going on, any new developments or anything like that. So that's kind of why I bring up the subject of we're going to be talking about a variety of different things, just because in the breaking news department, there isn't a whole lot to go off of. I guess I should go a little more in depth on my Pokemon Masters discussion, just because it is something. I talked about this, like I said, on my channel yesterday, and I basically just talked about how surprised I was by the game, because I genuinely did not really think much of the game when it was being promoted and being advertised and stuff like that, because I am not a mobile game fan by any stretch of the imagination. I could tell that this was something that might be a little better than usual when it comes to mobile games, and so I knew I was going to give it a try. I didn't really expect much of it, but it ended up being really fun, and I'm really enjoying it. And so I definitely recommend, if you haven't played it or haven't downloaded it yet, that you definitely give it a try. It is worth your time. Not only is it free, so there's literally no risk involved whatsoever, but so far from what I've experienced, it is free to play friendly. I've been hearing mixed reports on that, but in my experience, it is free to play friendly. I haven't had to spend any money to fully enjoy the game, and it's just It's a very pleasant experience. It's got a lot of charm. The graphics are really good. The animations are great. The gameplay is really good. It's just a really fun, nice game that you can just play on your phone. It's really cool, which is more than I can say for a lot of mobile games. So that is what is going on in the world of Pokemon in terms of current events. But like I said, no Sword and Shield news yet. And so because of that, we're actually going to talk about the topic I have decided to kind of go over today as the main topic is my least favorite things in Pokemon. And the reason why I wanted to go ahead and have this sort of be the main topic of discussion is because when you're a PokeTuber, you tend to talk about how much you like Pokemon a lot. And every once in a while, you'll make a worst Pokemon ever video or a least favorite Pokemon video, just to kind of play devil's advocate a little bit and try and attract people's attention or whatever. But in my personal experience, even though obviously I'm definitely not above that whole strategic way of trying to get people's attention and trying to get views and stuff like that, we've all done it before as YouTubers and PokeTubers. But for the most part, I should say, for me personally, and I guess as just a PokeTuber in general, I'm always talking about how much I love Pokemon, how great it is, how wonderful it is, and basically just giving Pokemon all the praise I have in the world. And I feel like I have done that, like, particularly so with this whole Sword and Shield news season because there's been so much negative energy in the air about it. And I have staunchly defended everything that has been going on with Sword and Shield. I'm not saying that the criticisms aren't valid that it's been getting. I have just basically been a voice of, I guess you could say, positivity for it, and saying that I'm still extremely excited for it. It's still going to be a great game. I have no faith lost whatsoever in it, that type of thing. And even though I genuinely feel that way, and I'm not just saying that because, oh, I'm a Pokemon channel who needs people to like want to talk about Pokemon in order to like have my channel like be alive and be healthy or whatever. I've had people legitimately tell me that like you're only talking up Pokemon just so you can have something to talk about because your career depends on it or whatever, which is absolutely not the case at all. I simply just love to talk about Pokemon and say good things about it because it's my favorite video game franchise ever, and there are tons of good things to talk about. Just because there are some people who want to criticize it doesn't mean that I personally feel the same way about those criticisms. Not saying they're invalid. I'm just saying I'm excited about the game. I'm ready. I'm like hyped for it. I'm enjoying it, or I know I'm going to enjoy it. And the things that are bugging other people don't bug me. That's just my personal take on it, and I'm allowed to have that take. However, with that being said, that brings me obviously to the topic of the day, which is there are still some things that I definitely feel, I guess, in a negative sense about Pokemon at the same time. And every once in a while, it is good to play devil's advocate and talk about those things, because even though Pokemon is my favorite franchise, even though it's an amazing franchise, obviously, the games are fantastic. Obviously, the trading card game is thriving. There's a TV show that's been running for over 1,000 episodes. It's got a lot of stuff going for it. It definitely is obviously great. That's why it's been around for 20 plus years. But we all kind of have I'm sure we as fans all have things we enjoy about it and things we wish were better. And once again, like I said, just to play devil's advocate today, I'm going to be talking about my least favorite things in Pokemon. Things that I don't like, things that bug me, things I wish would be different, whether it's in the games, main series, side games, spin-offs, basically anything from the franchise that I just am not a fan of. That's what I'm going to be talking about today. And I might not necessarily get to every single thing on my list because, like I said, we're just going to be shooting the breeze here and kind of just getting into the conversation and seeing where it takes us. But I am ready to kind of tell you guys my sort of pet peeves, if you will, about Pokemon. So without any further ado, we might as well go ahead and get into my first topic of discussion in terms of, or I guess I should say my first bullet point on this list, and that is the anime. The anime, believe it or not, is one of my least favorite things about the franchise. And this probably is going to have some mixed reactions, I would expect, because the anime is obviously such a beloved part of the franchise. It's kind of like its second pillar along with the games. It's obviously been running for over 20 years. It has over 1,000 episodes, over 20 movies. It's been extremely successful, and it's provided us with some of the most iconic characters in the Pokemon franchise, like not only Ash Ketchum, obviously, but it gave us the personas and the characters of Brock and Misty that we all know and love. It gave us Jesse, James, and Meowth, and you got Professor Oak, obviously. There's so many other characters that there's a lot of good in the anime. So I'm not saying it's terrible, but the reason why it is my least, or I should say one of my least favorite things about the franchise in general, is because I believe, by and large, the Pokemon anime is a big missed opportunity. And the reason why I say it's a big missed opportunity is because I just don't feel like it was executed very well. It's obviously based on the games, and so Ash and his travels reflect the travels that you go through in the games, getting gym badges, dealing with the evil team, going to the Pokemon League, that sort of thing. And then in order to kind of have everything make sense within the context of a TV show, they add different things, they add like different storylines and characters and basically things for Ash to do that kind of makes the TV show worth being a TV show. as opposed to just having it be a one-to-one representation of the game. But one of the main things with Pokemon and with the anime that always kind of rubbed me the wrong way and just has me feeling to this day that, like, even though the anime has its moments, it's never been like super great as a show, is the fact that it's kind of, in a lot of ways, it's very repetitive. And I've kind of felt this as far back as like when I was a kid and watching it, because the show follows a format of like, it's basically like a storyline of the day. It doesn't really have a storyline that builds upon itself as you go throughout the various seasons and the entire series as a whole, where you have like some giant goal that you're working towards as like the protagonist. There's not some big thing that they're going for. There's not a big thing that the villain's trying to do that overarcs the entire show. It's kind of more so just every episode is a single day in the life of Ash Ketchum. Something happens in that episode and they deal with it, and then you move on to the next episode, and they're not really connected that much, at least not for the most part. And for me, that has always been very like kind of boring, because it ends up with kind of the same thing happening every episode, where you get Ash and company, they're dealing with some sort of problem that they've encountered that day, whether it be someone else's problem, whether it be their own problem. They get caught up in that. They start dealing with their activity for the day. Then Team Rocket come in, they steal Pikachu, and it's basically just a wash, rinse, and repeat situation for the most part. Not necessarily every time, but by and large, that is the case. And I always just didn't really enjoy that part about the anime. I always thought it could be done so much better. Another thing I really didn't like is, I don't know, I guess the tone of the anime itself. This is something that's kind of very hard to deal with, because Pokemon is obviously a kids franchise. They want it to appeal towards kids, but the overall happy-go-lucky, everything is fine, sunshine and daisies type of tone that the anime has had, especially kind of in later seasons, like the Alola season, especially with its new art style, is very just happy-go-lucky, goofy, everything is right in the world type of vibe. And this was also the case for the little bits and pieces of the Gen 5 anime that I caught, which is another like not super good season. Everything is just, oh, this is so great, this is so awesome, that type of vibe, and that's just not fun. And it's even more not fun when we get these specials like Pokemon Generations and Pokemon Origins, for instance, that have a more serious tone to them. They're definitely darker in their approach, and they essentially give us the kind of Pokemon TV show that everyone has been watching, where it's kind of like no nonsense, it's serious, it's mature, but it's not so mature that it's inappropriate for little kids. Little kids could watch it and have it be appropriate for them just the same that adults could. The only difference is adults can enjoy it more because it's a little more mature, as opposed to the main series that's a little more focused on the kids. But the kids can still enjoy that more mature show, and I would argue, I mean, it does depend on the age, but I would argue that they would enjoy it more just because that makes for a better overall show in general. And that is ultimately what frustrates me so much about the anime, is that while we have this main series running that has been going on forever, that has always had Ash Ketchum as the protagonist, that has always kind of been like that second pillar to the franchise along with the games, as I said, in recent times we've had several different kind of like specials, if you will, like Pokemon Generations, like Pokemon Origins, and you could even say, since we talked about Pokemon Masters earlier, there was an animated trailer for Pokemon Masters that was in the anime style, and all three of these things, they present to us a glimpse of what Pokemon could look like, as like it gives us a glimpse at the potential of what the Pokemon anime could be in terms of just an amazing, incredible show that could actually have a legitimate storyline that you could get invested in, that could have twists and turns and plot twists and could really have you on the edge of your seat. But then all of these things are just fleeting moments that don't last more than a few episodes or a few weeks or a few months. In the case of Pokemon Origins, it was only 4 episodes, but it was better than anything I have really seen in the main anime, like 95% of the time, I would say. And then Pokemon Generations, that ran a little longer. It ran over the course of, like, I want to say 16 weeks or something as part of the 20th anniversary celebration, but the episodes were like 5 minutes long. And that was better than like 99% of the things I've seen in the main series anime. And then even this Pokemon Masters trailer, which wasn't even like an animated special, it was literally just a trailer for Pokemon Masters, with the style of animation that it had, that more serious tone, it just, all of this shows you how good a Pokemon TV show could be if it took itself a little more seriously, if it had that serious tone, and it would just be able to tell stories and put the Pokemon world in a light that everyone could enjoy. The growing fan base who are now adults could enjoy. The kids who are now being introduced to Pokemon could enjoy it, because I don't know about you guys, but when I was a kid, I definitely liked to like the big bad adult things to show how cool and like grown up I was, so to speak. And yeah, I can guarantee you there are kids like that out there as well. And even if they're not like that, even if they're just looking for a good show to watch, kids can enjoy a more mature show like that, just so long as it's obviously appropriate for them. And these types of examples with Origins and Generations, those are kid appropriate. They just have the benefit of being more appealing for older audience as well, and frankly, like I said, just being better shows in general. So overall, that is why the Pokemon anime is just one of my least favorite things about the franchise. It's one of my most frustrating things about the franchise, one of the most disappointing, because I just don't think it takes advantage of the potential it has and the opportunities it now has in this day and age, where it could go in so many different directions, but it just decides to keep on doing what it's doing, and even regress in a lot of ways with the way the Sword and Shield anime has gone. So it'll be interesting to see what the Galar, or I should say, how the Sun and Moon anime has gone. So it'll be interesting to see how the Sword and Shield anime goes. Crossing my fingers, not really get my hopes up, but maybe they'll surprise us. Who knows? Moving on, though, that was actually spent a little longer on that anime rant than I was planning on. But another thing I really am not a fan of when it comes to Pokemon are the way they handle mechanics in the games. And what I mean by this is Pokemon are notorious as a franchise for basically having a flavor of the day mentality when it comes to gameplay. And that basically means every new game they introduce a feature, be it secret bases, be it the underground in Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, be it the, you could say the Interlink in the Dream World in Generation 5, Mega Evolution in Generation 6, Z-Moves in Generation 7. They introduce all these things in every generation, but then, and all of them for the most part are amazing. Obviously, Mega Evolution is the most iconic and biggest and classic example of this, but you have things like secret bases that are really, really cool, and they add a lot to the game. I've always said it's kind of like a little bit of Animal Crossing in a Pokemon game. You have the underground where you were literally able to go excavate fossils, and it was kind of like, it was a little bit of the secret base mechanic, but it was also like, you could go hunt for items, and it was kind of like a spelunking type of experience, which was really cool. And then the Dream World was a whole other thing altogether, because it involved like this special website that was built for it. You could log on and connect it to your game, and it was this whole big thing. But then they never bring these things back. It's always a one-time thing. They never want to expand on them, and basically you get attached to these features as a fan. You really grow to love them, and then the rug is kind of just taken out from under you, and you don't have it the next time around. And as a Pokemon fan, that's really, really frustrating, because even though I am not the type of person and not the type of fan that is like just stuck in my ways and doesn't want to experience anything new, because I am more than happy to experience anything new that Pokemon wants to offer. I'm very open-minded, very willing to try new things when it comes to just the Pokemon experience, I guess, and like what they want to do with the franchise moving forward. I definitely don't like stick to a set number of things that I have to have in a Pokemon game in order for me to enjoy it. But at the same time, just like with the anime, as I said, it's a huge missed opportunity to not grow these features and build upon them and make them even better, because these are reasons why people are liking your games, be it Mega Evolution. Like, Mega Evolution is the perfect example, and like I said, the most iconic example, where you introduce a feature of Pokemon being able to evolve past their final stage, they get a new form, they get a stat boost, and it completely revolutionizes Pokemon as a franchise, Pokemon battling. It just completely changes the game, and people fall in love with it. And people really grow attached to it, and it becomes a really big reason as to why they love Pokemon. It reinvigorates their love for the franchise in a lot of cases. And then you just take that away. What they did with Generation 6 is they introduced it in X and Y, they added a couple more Megas in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, and then Generation 7, they added no new Megas, they threw it in the end of the game for post-game, so you couldn't even use it in the main story, and now in Generation 8, it's not even there. It's replaced with Dynamaxing and Gigantamaxing, and they're just really is no real legitimate reason as to why that should be the case. Game Freak's reason is that they want every game to have something unique to it, so essentially the older games are not abandoned as soon as a new game comes out. Basically, by giving X and Y the exclusivity of Mega Evolution, you give X and Y some value even after it's become an old game and it's basically become out of date, because people enjoy the Mega Evolution. They can only really get that experience in X and Y, so that gives them a reason to go back to X and Y, which is kind of I definitely understand that reasoning. It is kind of a noble cause, if you will, when you put it that way. But at the end of the day, that comes at the sacrifice of the growth of your franchise, because like I said, you're getting people invested in new features that you're ripping out from under them, and not only does that make people frustrated and disappointed, it also kind of prevents your franchise from building upon itself and growing and doing new things. That's not to say that every game ever has to have Mega Evolution and has to add more Megas and do it till the end of time, because if we did that, every single Pokemon would have a Mega Evolution after so long, and it wouldn't be a special thing anymore. So you definitely don't have to do it every time. You don't have to have the same things in every game and just keep adding more. That definitely gets a little bit out of hand. But you definitely also can't just write these amazing things that have made your games great. You can't just write them off either. At some point, Mega Evolution has got to come back, and you've got to add to it. You can't just abandon that forever, because it's kind of a one step forward, two steps back scenario where you've introduced this thing that has made your franchise. It's breathed a breath of fresh air into it. It's added a whole new layer. It's basically given it a nice new coat of paint, and people are excited about it, and then you, like I said, rip it out from under the rug, or rip the rug out from under the players who are really enjoying it. That's just, even though the reasoning is noble, it's very detrimental to the growth of the franchise when you do something like that, and I hope Game Freak eventually learns from that. It kind of seems like they're going to, just because they literally for the very first time in 2019, after 20 plus years of the franchise, they've actually brought one of these types of features back and expanded on it in the form of regional variants, as regional variants were introduced in Sun and Moon with Alola forms, and now they're back with Galarian forms. And so it's not a case of, oh, this was exclusive to Alola. It's just a thing that happens in Alola, and that's it. That was definitely what everyone expected to happen. It didn't, thank the Lord, and hopefully this is a sign of things to come with features like this in Pokemon games, where Game Freak has heard the cries of fans, they've heard the desperation and the disappointment, and they're willing to start doing something about it, and they're willing to expand on these features. Now, Is that going to mean we're going to have regional variants till the end of time? That remains to be seen. Many people are wondering with the onset of, or I should say the likely onset of Diamond and Pearl remakes, if we're going to have Sinnohan forms, which would be basically Sinnoh forms of Pokemon that aren't from Sinnoh. And that's very difficult to say whether or not that will happen, because obviously we've seen Sinnoh before in previous games, obviously prior to Sun and Moon when the regional variant mechanic was introduced, but there was nothing like that. So like in that kind of situation, are they going to kind of retroactively integrate this feature and give every region new forms? I certainly hope they do. I kind of feel like, given the lore of the Pokemon world, you can't have 2 regions have this feature but not the rest. That would be kind of weird. So it'll be interesting to see how they handle it, but I definitely feel like that's something that they definitely have to invest into, especially since they've decided to do it a second time. And hopefully that will be the case with Mega Evolutions. Hopefully something will give them the reason to bring it back, and add more Mega Evolutions, because obviously that's something people want. And at the end of the day, like I said, it just prevents the growth of the franchise, prevents its evolution, and while maybe it's for a good reason, it's not healthy, I would say, for the franchise. And with our last couple of minutes, I want to mention more than just a couple of things, because I definitely intended to talk about more than just a couple. I guess I'll go ahead and mention some honorable mentions, and that would include event Pokemon distributions. I've talked about this on my channel before. The fact that they are giving us legendary and mythical Pokemon for free that are the most powerful Pokemon in the games. They're not giving any backstory to mythical Pokemon. You're not even catching them. You're just getting gifted them. That is a crying shame to not only the Pokemon that are being distributed, but it's a crying shame to the very foundation of what Pokemon stands for as a game that you catch Pokemon and you find them and you search them out and you catch them all and you put in the work to do that and complete your Pokedex. It's completely sacrilege to the Pokemon franchise, and that needs to go away. So crossing our fingers that will be the case in Generation 8. Another thing I don't really like, I would say, Generation 5. Generation 5 is my least favorite Pokemon generation. It's not that I hate it. I definitely don't hate it, but the Pokemon in that generation are my least favorite. I think there are many that are bad in design. They're either ugly or uninspired or just flat out just not good. I remember specifically when I picked up Pokemon Black for the first time when it came out, I had genuinely thought when I was playing the game, man, this must be the time when they're really actually running out of ideas for new Pokemon. Because, and obviously, that's the classic argument as to why Pokemon is bad, quote unquote. That's what people always say. These new Pokemon suck. They're running out of ideas. They should just quit and stop. And I've never ever thought that in my life. But when I played Black and White for the first time, that thought genuinely started to creep in my head. And that was kind of a scary thing. And I think I definitely, like I said, there are really good parts about Gen 5. I definitely don't hate it, but there definitely is something to be said about the fact that that thought could creep into my head in the first place. So Generation 5, overall, my least favorite generation. I also think the story is kind of overrated in Generation 5, too. It's definitely, I would say it's a little more deep. It's definitely one of the better Pokemon stories, but people act like it's this amazing story. It's just this awesome all-time video game, great story. And it's really not. It's good for a Pokemon game, but overall it's kind of it's whatever, it's average. So yeah, Gen 5, not the biggest fan of. But with that being said, that we're all out of time, which is very surprising to me because these half-hour segments always fly by. I always think I'm going to get in a bunch of topics, and then I end up just talking, and before we know it, we're done. I definitely went on a rant with the anime segment, but I wanted to get that off my chest. I haven't really talked about my feelings for the anime a lot because you can't really make anime videos on YouTube because if you use anime footage, ShowPro, the distributors of the anime, will claim your video, block it, and copyright it because they haven't really entered the 21st century and they don't get the concept of free marketing. So it is what it is. But with all that being said, that wraps up today's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed. As always, be sure to follow wherever you're listening. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to leave a comment. Let me know your thoughts about all this below. Be sure to follow UCast Studios not only on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, but also there's a Twitter account you can follow. You can also follow me, Hoops and Hip Hop, everywhere. Obviously, first and foremost on YouTube, but also Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, even my Spotify as well. I have Pokemon remixes you can listen to there. It's a great time. It's wonderful. And like I always say, I appreciate you guys so much for tuning in. We'll obviously be back next Friday as well for more discussion and hopefully, I don't know what's going to happen next week. We'll see if any news gets dropped. I'm kind of thinking that we're not going to have news, and low-key, I'm kind of crossing my fingers that maybe they'll hold off a little bit for that because of certain things I have planned for my own channel. But it seems like we're actually going to get a general Nintendo Direct pretty soon, so that'll be fun. But regardless, with all that being said, like I said, I'll be back next Friday. In the meantime, follow me other places. Follow UCast Studios other places. Talk to me there. I hope you guys have a great weekend, and until the next one, I will check you guys later.